We are recording. So today we are joined with affinity partner WAP Consulting, the leading LCA or life cycle assessment provider in North America, to discuss environmental product declarations. I will now hand the conversation over to our guest experts, Josh and Hannah, to introduce their company and services. Welcome, Josh and Hannah.
Thanks, Jessica. Good morning, everyone. Hopefully, everyone is not frozen out there. I know we're getting the polar vortex at the moment all over the place. Hannah is joining us from up in Canada, so she's used to this stuff. But I got to be honest, I live down here north of Atlanta, and they call it Hot Atlanta, but today is not. This last couple of days is not where we're going. But let's jump into the conversation around embodied carbon. There's going to be a lot of terminology that we use. We'll try and make sure that any acronyms we use, we kind of give you full disclosure on what they are. But we're going to talk about embodied carbon. Why are we caring about it at this moment? What is an EPD? And what are Carolina Ready Mix Concrete Association and Tennessee Concrete Association and WAP doing about it? At the moment. Obviously, some of you from Kentucky, we can certainly have conversations as well there. So Hannah, if we jump to the next one. So why WAP? Jessica very kindly mentioned us as the leading LCA provider here in North America, and we feel that's accurate because between our software, which we'll be talking about, and our normal quote unquote life cycle assessment work, we've provided the most LCAs for environmental product declarations in North America. We do work around the world though, and we've been working on LCAs for a long time, going on 12, 13 years now, in terms of the development of EPDs. Also, we have people like myself and others who actually sit on international committees that help write the ISO standards that define what life cycle assessment and EPDs are. EPDs, environmental product declarations, as Jessica said earlier, LCAs, life cycle assessments. And also we've had numerous people sit on different lead standard committees and things like that, and also help the federal government with a couple of things that we're going to talk about here today. So Hannah, if you want to jump forward. So EPDs are coming. I don't want anyone to be scared. I know for the rest of the day now, though, you will have no. If you're the same age as me, it will be in your head. So you're welcome for that. These aren't as scary as they sound. I know a lot of people are saying, "Craig, this is another thing that we're being asked for. Can't believe it. Why do we keep getting asked for different things? Now it's this environmental product something, ED, something. They're not that scary, I promise. We've worked out a tool to make it fairly easy, also fairly inexpensive, to be able to comply with these requirements that are being asked for. And also, in lots of cases, there's extra money in it for you to actually produce these EPDs. So Hannah, if we go to the next slide, now that I have sufficiently scared everyone from jumping in the ocean. So where and how are EPDs being used? Another way I could actually go into this section is actually the return on investment in making into EPDs. I normally like to start with this so that people understand upfront, hey, there's money to be made off doing this. I'll tell you how to do it in a couple of minutes, and Hannah's actually going to show you our actual software that we have for the concrete industry to be able to do this fairly simply. But I want people to understand where the money's coming back for their time, energy, and effort, and some funds. So Hannah, if we jump to the next slide. So the Inflation Reduction Act, it gets talked about a lot. There's also the infrastructure, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act that was done the year before the Inflation Reduction Act, that has given billions of dollars, and that's billions with a B, billions of dollars for procurement of low embodied carbon material, including concrete. The Bipartisan Infrastructure Act has asked that the GSA use their funds when they're developing and retrofitting landed ports of entry and ports of entry throughout the country to use low embodied carbon concrete and asphalt. So that's great. Okay, that's one way that they will be spending money. The Inflation Reduction Act, though, I specifically wanted to talk about because this is money that goes above and beyond the normal fees that GSA and Federal Highway Administration and the local DOTs will be spending money for concrete. and cementitious products. HUD also has some work here along with FEMA. Hopefully no one needs the FEMA funds, but they're there if necessary. So again, these Inflation Reduction Act gives away these billions of dollars, and I want to go into some specifics here as we go. So Hannah, if we hit the next one. So the most important one for the 4 states that we're talking to today, the Carolinas, Kentucky, and Tennessee, it will probably be the Federal Highway Administration's Inflation Reduction Act work. Each Department of Transportation will have an opportunity here starting next month to apply to get this Inflation Reduction Act money. Again, there's $2 billion of it, so each state will be able to be given these funds to help procure low carbon material. With that, the largest one being cementitious material, concrete. So obviously there's steel and asphalt that's also in there, but obviously your folks' area is a big focus with this. This Federal Highway Administration directive should be coming out, as I mentioned, next month. We have already heard from a number of state Department of Transportations that are interested in getting their hands on those funds. As soon as that information is out in the public, we'll be able to tell you more. But again, even if you were to just take the first $1 billion and divide it by the 50 states, you're talking $20 million each for each state Department of Transportation to ensure that low embodied carbon materials, through being able to tell that they're low embodied carbon through environmental product declarations, are being used for state transportation. And I'm sure there are a number of organizations throughout these 4 states that participate in the state transportation work that's going on. And if we go to the next slide. This is the General Service Administration. As I mentioned, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Act started and said, okay, when you're using concrete on General Service Administration projects, you need to have a certain threshold and below of your concrete. So the threshold that they're talking about is what's called GWP, or global warming potential, which is determined when you do a life cycle assessment, and then you put that into a document called the Environmental Product Declaration. GSA on all their projects now has differentiated the concrete by PSI strength, which you see on the left-hand side, and then specifics for individual global warming potential maximums that are allowed in their projects. They're also asking for EPDs if and when they're doing asphalt as well. The next slide, Hannah, though, is specifically GSA's low embodied carbon projects around the country right now. So this is where their $2.15 billion will be spent on individual projects to procure things like concrete. As you can see here in the 4 states that we're talking, we've got a couple projects there. But again, it is rolling out to all GSA projects through the Infrastructure Act, but specifically for the Inflation Reduction Act, there is money there for projects in your 4 states. Hannah, if we go to the next slide. Additionally, there's also different certification schemes. So these are universities in your areas tend to use these things like LEED or Green Globes to certify buildings to show that they're sustainable. EPDs can help with those. Also, within a couple of the municipalities, they're using green codes like the basis of the International Green Construction Code, or ASHRAE 189.1. There's also the NAHB National Green Building Standard. BREEAM is probably not utilized as much in these 4 states. Green Globes is utilized for the VA system, though, the United States Veterans Affairs buildings and things of that nature. All of these accept environmental product declarations to help show compliance with criteria or credits within them. So it's not just the federal funds that will be coming in the state level DOTs, but it's also individual commercial projects that could be giving you extra procurement opportunities when you have these environmental product declarations. So Hannah, let's get to the next slide and actually start to talk about what this is. So that's how you're going to get your return on investment. And again, I like to start there because people want to know, hey, what's in it for my company? So all of this is based off what's called a life cycle assessment, or an LCA. Sometimes you hear it called life cycle analysis as well. A life cycle assessment truly looks at every part of what is happening in the complete life cycle of your product. So how are we getting things out of the earth, the minerals out of the earth and what we're using? In your case, the aggregates and things of that nature. The actual production, the packaging, the shipping to a location, the use phase, the end of life in the waste phase. Obviously for you folks, a lot of this is very circular. Your products over the years have been known to be a very circular product, and by that we mean this circle of the life. I don't mean to go all Lion King on everyone. I guess that's my second reference to movies here. I mean, with the Oscars coming up, I guess I'm in a very movie mind. But you want things coming from the earth and then use them as many times as possible. And again, your products area has been known to have a great amount of that to be able to be done. So this life cycle assessment is an actual assessment typically done by a third party, such as WAP, where we get data and information out of your systems and then have to do this full life cycle assessment, which can take quite a lot of time in the traditional way of doing life cycle assessment. Hannah's going to be able to tell you here in a couple of minutes how we've actually cut that way, way down and made it much easier. Hannah, if we go to the next slide. So we're talking about embodied carbon, and the life cycle assessment is, I put it circular, but I also want you to understand it here, why it's important in, say, the life cycle of a project, or in this case, say, a building. So Hannah, if you hit the next couple of dots, you'll see embodied impact is in a ton of different places, right? Traditionally, we have talked about operational carbon a ton, right? Oh, we want to insulate our buildings. We want to turn our lights on, off when we're not using them, lower our heating, obviously not right now with the polar vortex, and decrease our amount of air conditioning in the summers. That is all operational carbon usage. Excuse me. Sorry, didn't want to sneeze in everyone's ear. That would have been really bad. That's operational carbon, and we've done a really good job of that. Obviously, through things like the Energy Star program, we do it in our own homes, when we buy refrigerators, when we buy washers and dryers and dishwashers and things of that nature. And we do it great in buildings, insulate them well. We've done great with the HVAC and mechanical systems and insulating our buildings and all that. But we haven't looked as well at the embodied carbon. Hannah, if you click a couple more times, I think we've got a couple more arrows that pop up. There's the operational. Look at all the other areas of embodied impact, though, from taking things out of the ground and making products like we talked about before in the life cycle assessment. That's embodied carbon, embodied impacts from making the material, shipping and the construction of the buildings, the actual maintenance and repair of our buildings, the end of life. All of these things are embodied environmental impacts beyond the operational use, and you guys have control over lowering these impacts within your system. So Hannah, if we go to the next slide. So that life cycle assessment and being able to find those embodied impacts and calculate them, it can be intense, right? In the traditional sense of how we do life cycle assessment. And that impact, that global warming potential, specifically GWP number, is how most of these buy clean procurement, sometimes you'll hear them referred to as buy clean procurement processes, are done. The Inflation Reduction Act money, the federal highway money, LEED buildings and things of that nature that you're trying to bid on. These things are typically looking for that GWP number. But life cycle assessments, when they're fully done, excuse me, can be 100 pages long, can be very detailed, very technologically dense and intense for people. Most procurement teams aren't going to read all that. So what was invented to communicate that information, because in that life cycle assessment, there's a lot of the secret sauce of how you folks make products and the material that you use to make your products, is what's called an EPD, or an Environmental Product Declaration. And it's exactly what it sounds like. It is purely a declaration of how much impact the making of your product is. So we create what's called a functional unit for an environmental product declaration, so that all the products in this category are treated the same. So like 1 yard of material. Again, a ton of a certain product, 10 square feet of X, right? So that's what we do to make sure all products are looked at as the same. But then we talk about, okay, how do we communicate the life cycle impacts, right? So it helps the procurement teams understand I'm comparing at least apples to apples. While they may not all be Granny Smith, some may be Macintosh, some may be Granny Smith. Uh, there's golden apples and things of that nature. They're at least all in the same fruit family. So we have some comparison level within them. And if we slide to the next slide, we'll talk about what's in the EPD. Again, within the EPD, there are results, and I'll get to those in a second, but it really truly talks about that functional unit, okay? How much of this are you pouring on a site, and then you times the impact that we have, right? You actually have the product declaration, definition and information about the building material in your case, obviously. The PSI strength and things that talks about the basic material origins, talks a little about the manufacturing process, what the in-use conditions are, any testing results and verification, as I mentioned, the PSI strength for the product and things of that nature. But then we also get to the LCA results, and this is where people are really interested in the data nowadays. So Hannah, if we go to the next. This is typically what comes out in a traditional life cycle assessment. You have these, you actually see there's 6 here, but there's 7, and I'll get to impact areas that come out. That first one, Hannah, if you click one more time, is global warming potential. This upper left-hand column specifically is where most procurement teams are looking. This is where the US General Service Administration, the Federal Highway, EPA, other local jurisdictions, procurement teams, architects, designers are setting these GWP maximums. And typically it's based on that A1 to A3 column. That is what we call cradle, meaning coming out of the ground, to gate. A1 is the cradle, A3 is the gate, meaning it's left your facility, right? Like you guys have shipped it away from your plant to go to the job site. Because again, tracking a lot of the other A4, A5, the B level stages of the use phase, the C end of life has not always been possible through all our products. So we have focused on in the procurement community is specifically looking at that A1 to A3. And again, that GWP, the global warming potential line, A1 to A3 is the number that a lot of these procurements are looking at. But within the EPD, you also have many other things. You have the ozone depletion potential. You have acidification potential, eutrophication potential, photochemical ozone creation, abiotic resource depletion, both natural and fossil fuel, or mineral and fossil fuel based. So you've got these 7 impact categories that actually come out in an EPD, and we are seeing some movement in some of those other areas. Obviously, areas worried about eutrophication or acid rain and worried about acid lakes, for example. Don't want to take you back to high school chemistry, but these individual parameters are a lot of the things that we learned about in terms of the impacts that we were having on the environment. GWP, though, is traditionally a stand-in for almost everything else. 95+% of the time, if GWP goes down, all the other impacts go down. There's a couple of product types, not in your world specifically, but there are a couple of product types where GWP can go down, but they're doing other things that potentially acidification potential bounces up or eutrophication potential bounces up. But for the most part, GWP goes down, that global warming potential, everything else go down, which is why they're looking specifically in that area. Hannah, if you go to the next slide, this, Hannah, is where I will turn over to you so you can talk about how we've taken the traditional life cycle assessment, which can take months and months and months, and made it into a really, really simplified version of life cycle assessment that's still accepted by all these people, and do it on a batch by batch basis.
Yeah, so as Josh just alluded, previously When you're doing LCA and EPD, you had to go through this very long process. It included Excel spreadsheets and other softwares and everything under the sun. But we made it very simple by providing software where you can go in and enter in your own information, spit off the EPDs directly in one software rather than going kind of back and forth with consultants. Going through QC checks and all of that, you just have it in one place. So what we call Theta EPD is our software system. It is rebranded of multiple solutions. Previously, the Athena Institute had the concrete portion, and Emerald Ecolabel with Napa is still with Napa. However, we're now under one Theta by WAP sustainability. We have expanded since merging last year with the concrete and the asphalt. We just launched an aggregate tool last December, so if you're also an aggregate producer, you can come speak with us about that as well. We have a concrete solution, asphalt solution, we're also working on some other products like steel and glass as well. So we move into the state association program. We have a case study with the Tennessee Concrete Association, which we then sparked up a partnership with the Carolinas as well. So we have a partnership where we reach out to members, we do webinars, we help them out with EPDs. We're basically a full service sustainability consultant firm for members of these two states. So what happens in these programs is WAP and the state, such as CRMCA, enters into an MOU agreement for the program, where we define the financials, the legal jargon, and all of that. Once that happens, we move into member programs and educational content. So webinars like we're doing today. We have information on the website. You can email us directly for any assistance through the program. We also support opportunities, of course, for LCA and EPD in those presentations and webinars, and also through our software as well. So Josh did a wonderful job of showcasing what an LCA and EPD is. I'm going to move into the processes of both of these. I'll do an overview here on the slides first, and then we'll move into a demo of our actual software concrete tool. So to start off with, we have to do a little bit of data collection. That includes your company information, plant information, mixed data designs, and all of that. That gets put into our system and goes through a data cleansing through WAP, also known as a QC check on our side, and then a data clarification. The plants get submitted to a program operator, EPD program operator, a third-party verifier, to review all of that information. And then once it's gone through that rigorous check, you can then publish it to a couple options. EC3, Building Transparency website, which is a repository for all EPDs, as well as on the program operator of your choosing that we've gone through for verification. Then we have a couple of performance specs here, some that are required, such as the compressive strength for your mix designs. We have some optional options for you. So environmental exposure class, slump, you can define your characteristics for your concrete performance. We also are required to gather your information for cement, aggregates, admixtures, batch water, any fibers, but also your transportation. So the method of transportation from your manufacturing of your materials to your plants, and including your manufacturing at your actual facility. So that's 12 months worth of data, whether that's electricity, natural gas usage, water, fleet usage, everything used to produce your mixed designs and your concrete is what we're going to be asking for. I'm going to move into the demo of the tool. Hopefully this comes up as easy as I planned. There we go. So this is our Theta concrete tool. It is a web-based, cloud-based software, so you don't have to download any software to your computer, to your desktop or anything. You'll get your own login that you can log in directly to your site with all of your company information in there that stays in there for however long you want to keep your subscription to our tool. To start off with, we would ask you to enter in your plant information. So this includes information like your plant name, the address of your plant, where it's located. If you happen to have different divisions within your company, you can also include those here. Once you've added those, you can view it in a plant list that looks very similar to this, where you can see the division on the left-hand side. You can see your plant name, any users associated to each of those plants, the city, and then the state it's located in. And then what's handy with the software is that instead of going through all Excel sheets and passing it via email or Dropbox, your survey or concrete facility survey opens up directly into the tool once you've added a new plant. So on the left-hand side here, you just go through and select each plant you want to work on. You'd hit continue here, and it opens up to the facility survey. I alluded to this in the slides, but we'll be asking for 12 months worth of your data. Typically people do the previous years, so in this case it'd be 2023 data, the most up-to-date as possible, which will help you in the long run. We'll ask for your total concrete production. On the right-hand side, you have the options to change the units as needed. We'll ask for your purchased energy, so this includes your electricity, any on-site generated renewable electricity, natural gas usage, fuel usage, diesel, gasoline, propane. Your annual plant consumables, so road dust, chemicals, oils, lubricants, greases, your total water usage, any waste generated, and then finally any air emissions and water emissions if you have those tracked at your plant sites. Once you're
And Hannah, one thing I want to make sure that people understand is this is entered once per year per plant. This is not, you don't have to do this every time. We enter that once per year, so we've got that past year of data, and then it can be used for all batch related information for the next year.
Yes, thank you for that. Once the survey is all filled out, we typically tell people to move from left to right across the top, but you can kind of do it in any order, but whatever makes sense to you and you have that information on hand while you're waiting for others, you can fill it in. We move to the supplier directory. So this is a mass directory for all of the plants in the system for your company. It is alphabeticalized. We will include your cement suppliers, your aggregate suppliers, admixtures, any SCM usage. That is all included in this list here. And it's important to fill these out because this is what you're going to be using for your mix designs when we move on to that portion of the tool. So on the left-hand side is where you add a new supplier. And then the second drop down here, you can actually specify the materials for each of those. So if you have a cement supplier and you use Portland cement and Portland limestone, you can include both of those and it'll show up in your mix designs when you're building out your concrete mixes. Actually, just one more thing to point out here. You may see some little green icons on this list here. That just means that there's a product-specific EPD being linked in the background. So rather than using the average materials or data sets built into the tool, we're actually gathering those EPDs from all of the sites out there and putting into the tool, so you're getting more specific data rather than just using the average built in. So there's a lot of cement companies out there with EPDs, soon to be aggregate, and also some admixtures as well currently. Moving along here, we have the supplier distances. So what this is that we require you to put in the one-way distances from the manufacturing center of your material to your plants. This can be through truck, rail, ocean, or barge, or kind of a mixture of any of those four. This is plant specific, so you'll do this for each of your plants, but once you do it, it's in the system. You don't have to redo it every single time you want to enter in a mix design. It's in there for good, unless you need to add a new supplier, you run a remove one since you don't use that one anymore. And then once you have all that information in, that's called the LCA data, we will send that off to your program operator for review. They'll take a look at it. They'll go through this, the surveys, the supplier distances, make sure it all looks good and the numbers aren't out of ordinary, anything like that. And then they'll come in and view some mixed designs. So if you have some in the system, they'll just go through and make sure all the numbers look good and fall within a certain range. They may put in a test one for you if you don't have any built into the system yet. But what would happen here is you'd select your plant, you'd put in a mixed design, mixed description, compressive strength units, and then go here where it says show mixes. You'll select that same plant. You can see all the mixed designs for each of those plants in the drop down. You'll hit show, and then it looks like this. So this one here, of course, is already built out. When you get into the tool, this section will be empty. To add a mixed ingredient, you go to the top. There'll be a list of all the ingredients specified in the previous steps in the supplier directory and then the supplier distances. If we're using this cement supplier here, we grab the amount. You can change the units to whatever's applicable to you, and then click add there. And you can see it just populates to the bottom of this table. You have the option of deleting, editing as needed. So let's go ahead and delete that one since there's already a cement in there. Once your mix design's fully built out, you can see the impact summary table will show here at the bottom. On the left-hand side, you can see the impact indicators, GWP being the first line item, like Josh mentioned earlier. We have your units there for each of those impact indicators, and then we have the results. And you can see that on the tool here, we have two results sections, per cubic meters and per cubic yards. For the product category rules for concrete, we're required to label it in per cubic meters, but we know that you guys work in cubic yards. Instead of doing that conversion by yourself and perhaps getting the wrong number, we've done it for you to save some time and make it a little bit easier for you. So both of those will showcase on your EPDs when you print them out and download them. And then finally, we have your A1, A2, and A3 breakdowns by percentages. A1 is all your raw materials being entered up above, so your cements, aggregates, admixtures. Your A2 is your transportation. Then your A3 is all that manufacturing information we put in on the first step. And once you're ready to actually produce your actual EPDs, we have a couple buttons here. So the first one is the generate EPD button or download EPD. So that goes to your download folder, opens up in your PDF browser, whichever happens on your own computer. You can get that. You can send it off to whoever's asking for your customers, architects, whoever. We then have the publish EPD button. So this one goes to, like I said, the program operator, but it also goes to EC3 as well. So there's basically two repositories for your EPDs. Both are publicly available, and you want to make sure you push those so everybody, so it goes into the EC3 program, and you can see your numbers and how well you're doing. So those are available to you.
Hannah, just really quickly, I just want to explain EC3. EC3 is a publicly available tool. It's a not-for-profit database that's out of the Northwest, actually came out of a partnership between one of the largest construction firms on the planet and Microsoft, where a lot of architects, designers, specifiers, procurement professionals, federal governments, local governments are using EC3 to find EPDs. So most program operators have that relationship tie. So as Hannah said, it publishes on the program operator and EC3 at the same time when you publish it there.
Thank you, Josh. And one last thing I wanted to highlight here is the benchmarking system that we have built into the tool. So what that means is you can come here to this section of the software. You can grab your mix design there at the top. You can also then grab a benchmark mix and then hit graph. So the benchmarks come from the NRMCA industry average that NRMCA has done in the past. You can benchmark your mixes against the regional benchmarks where you're located. You can see how well you're doing to the industry averages. From there, you can optimize your mix designs. You can figure out how well you're doing. If you need to lower it for your procurement or whoever's asking for your EPDs, you can do that here and you can view that. It also comes with a report here, so it's just a one-pager, basically telling you what exactly is on the graph, but just on a document, so it's a little bit easier to read. So that is also available to you. We are updating those industry benchmarks currently, so those will be most up to date for you when you go ahead and use the tool.
Yeah, and Hannah, just really quickly on this slide, on this section as well, we envision moving forward that local governments will start using these regionalizations for those global warming potentials. As of right now, they're using just one nationally, for example. GSA and Federal Highway are using just one nationally, but as they start to regionalize these based off NRMCA data, as Hannah mentioned, we're updating. This will help you understand, hey, is my mix below what they're potentially asking for?
Awesome. I'm going to move back to the slides now, just kind of go over what we just went through. So we have still some performance specs here. Again, on the required side, we have the compressive strength units, but we also have the mixed proportions. So like what we said, we went through cements, SEMs, aggregates, admixtures, the transportation information, and also the manufacturing information as well. So that is what you'll need to create your EPDs through our system. I'm gonna jump it back to Josh here to finish out the slides.
Yeah, can you go back one more, Hannah? Just wanted to mention, I know when we were talking about, we're like, hey, we're making it easier, and then we just threw a bunch of stuff at you on a software solution. And at first you're like, that's a lot of information. It feels like a lot of information up front. I will tell you that Hannah does a wonderful job when people sign up with us. Hannah is actually your contact person and will give you a training on, okay, here's how we are doing this. Let's start off. And again, a lot of this information you're doing once. So your again, your facility level data that we're talking about here. So your 12 months of energy, water, waste, things of that nature, your distance from suppliers, that's all entered once per year, right? And then as you change admixtures, you're able to do these EPDs on a batch by batch basis, very inexpensively, from traditional life cycle assessment, which ran into the 5 figures, where traditionally now we're in the low 4 figures to be able to produce for an entire 12 months every batch that you do. And again, once you have your suppliers in there, now you're just mixing and matching, right? So it's that one time of entering data as opposed to having to supply the data every single time. They'll be in the system. You'll also be getting updated data. If someone updates a new environmental product declaration, as Hannah mentioned, one of your suppliers gets an EPD done per the system or through other means and is updated, that updates your suppliers. You don't need to go in and put their new EPD in. It's automatically updated in the system, which helps most of the time lower your environmental impact as well. So again, it might be a short time of putting data in, and then it's just adding mixtures as you go. As someone says, hey, for this project, we need an EPD, great, here's our mixture, click, and the EPD is all done. So Hannah, if you go to the next slide. Again, we've worked out different with the CRMCA and Tennessee Concrete Association. We have WAP agreements to be able to have your membership be able to help towards this. We also have different agreements with different associations around the world. So depending on if you're a member of different associations, just simply ask. If you go to Theta WAP, you'll be able to see that it's there. Additionally, Hannah, if we go to the next page, though, I believe we do some of our industry association partnerships. We do have individual web page signups. This goes directly to Hannah, so you will be hearing from Hannah when you enter into this website. But if you look up Theta WAP, it should take you directly to the website where you're able to look up and submit, and then we're able to ask questions about who you're a member of and things of that nature and go from there. So Hannah, if you go to the next slide, we're WAP, again, lots of things in the sustainability world. So getting other questions about sustainability, just ask us. We've probably seen all at one point or another, so let us know. And then Hannah, if you want to go to the last slide. That's it for kind of what we've done. In this amount of time, I would promise you that you'd be able to get your first EPDs out like that within the software solution, just in the time that we presented, actually probably quicker, the way that Hannah's able to train people. So I know Jessica just put something in the chat about any questions. Jessica, do you want people to do it in the chat or do they come off mute? How do you guys normally do it?
Either way works. I just wanted to let folks know that they can put questions in the chat if that makes them feel more comfortable, or they can, of course, just ask now that we have time open for Q&A.
Yeah, please. Any questions?
Yeah, Josh, this is Tim Kopek with Sunrock. I got a question about I guess the proprietary nature of our materials and our products and our mix designs. What's the integrity of sharing what we put on your website?
Yeah, so basically, when you get a unique login to you, right, Tim? So great question. It is specifically to you. You're entering your data. That mix is only part of your thing, goes into your EPD, and then your results are produced, right? So again, that is not being shared with anyone else. Now, again, as your suppliers are going in, you may know that some of your suppliers may be used by other people, right? So their data may already be in there. So as you enter, it will pull an EPD, not from a competitor, not a mix from a competitor, but your supplier's data. So like aggregate, Anna mentioned. We have a number of Portland cement suppliers that have EPDs. We have a lot of aggregate suppliers and admixtures that have their EPDs. So as you enter them, their EPDs go in to fill as suppliers, but your data, your mix does not go to the outside world. Again, except you publishing your EPD and the global warming potential maximums and other impacts are there. That does not get shared with anyone throughout the system. Does that make sense?
It does, thanks.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. We get it all the time as LCA practitioners, Tim. We see a lot of stuff. We've seen supply chains all over the world, and we sign NDAs with people all over the place to make sure that our systems are secure and we're not sharing anyone's system, because we recognize this is you folks' secret sauce. This is how you make your living. So, any other questions? And again, obviously, if I'm here, a question comes up, you've got Hannah and my email there. Hannah at wapsustainability.com or Josh at wapsustainability.com. And certainly Jessica, Alan, both on the call here today, hey Alan, know how to get in touch with us as well.
I have a question. Speaking of supply chain, let's say we have an EPD for a mix specific design, but let's say there's a cement allocation, but there's also a project that is out for bid that requires EPDs. What happens in that case?
So the great thing about the agreements that we've worked out with CRMCA, with you guys folks specifically, Jessica, and the software is it's a 12-month basically licensed software. So as things go, Jessica, if you have a mix that's close, right, and they have a specific what they're looking for, a GWP number, that's where, like Hannah said, you can go in and tweak your mix a little bit and see if it's below that GWP number before you publish anything. So we have people that use the system not always to produce an EPD, because you're not charged on an EPD basis or a mix basis, right? It's free. It's not, sorry, free is the wrong word. There is a fee for 12 months. So literally 365 this year, 366 days of usage. We'll give you that extra day for free. So every time you can go in, you can update your mix. So you can go in and say, oh, if we use this type of admixture, maybe or this aggregate, we're still getting the same PSI strength, but our GWP drops and we're below that limit, right? So that's where that graphing that Hannah talked about, or even you just going through the process and seeing down below, hey, we're at 260 and they were asking for 280. We've still met all the other parameters and we're good to go. We have these admixtures. So you can be producing results for like R&D purposes without ever publishing an EPD, right? You don't need to publish the EPD to get those results. That's how the software works. Does that make sense, Jessica?
It does. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And we have, in terms of results, I would guess there's probably at least double the amount of people going through doing the results and clicking buttons and being like, oh, but what if I had this? But what if I had this? But what if I had this? Although there is 80,000 cement batch level EPDs in the marketplace nowadays, there's probably at least 160, 200,000 that have been calculated that never see the light of day just because people are trying to get to the right mixtures.
Well, it's certainly helpful from a mix optimization standpoint as well, because you can get in there and utilize that tool just for hypothetical purposes.
Yeah, and that's the other great thing is with Theta now also working with aggregates, we're going to have more and more what we call primary data. So Hannah had mentioned that we do have these generalized numbers for a lot of different, types of aggregate and types of cement and types of admixtures. But as more and more people give primary data and get their own impact data that we're able to fill, typically those results go down. The impact results go down. And in this case, down is better, right? Because the more primary data, the more specific it is. LCA people are very cautious by nature. They don't ever want to be accused that they underestimated an impact. So typically these averages are higher, but as we get that primary data in, and as more, as I mentioned, as more cement suppliers, uh, uh, admixtures, aggregates get their own, that's coming into our system, and you guys are able to use those and say, oh, if I didn't even know this supplier is out there in the marketplace, can I grab them, and how does that lower my system? So it's actually connecting people on a good level as well, people that they might not have known about in the past.
One last question for me, and I'll let others chat questions or, of course, come off mute. But is the tool also available to use when you're considering, say, plant retrofits, when you're looking at maybe installing PV, for example, to offset some of your carbon emissions?
Yeah, certainly. You can create. Hannah, I don't know if we've actually seen a demo plant, but you can certainly create a demo plant,
Yeah,
Hannah.
absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. You can go in and create different plans. You can do one with the retrofits, one without it, so you can kind of see the difference. If that's something you're interested in, please do reach out to us. We'd be happy to help you set that up. Need any help with that as well, we can help.
Yeah, but Jessica, like I'm thinking, yeah, there's PV. There's also, people who are doing potentially rain capture on site, which means they're using less water, different things like that. I know that lots of different technology that, people are getting tax rebates for now from energy saving concepts. So yeah, creating a demo site is something that's obviously, you create your demo site and your admixtures are still there. So you still are able to create those admixtures. Hey, here's what we do with our traditional plant. If we were to go to one where we're pure rain capture or something like that, we're using no quote unquote grid water or zero grid electricity, or we're cutting out some of our fossil fuel that we're using on site or something like that, and see how it goes. It's certainly a huge potential.
Excellent. Thank you. Any other questions on the line before we end today's recording?
All right, folks. Well, yeah, let us know. Jessica, Caroline, Alan, thank you for the invite and obviously the relationship we've built. We're really proud of the work we're doing together, and hopefully we can help as many of your members as possible meet some of these requirements and get access to a lot of these funds that are now out there for procurement of these products.
Thank you so much, Josh and Hannah. We appreciate your time and expertise today, and we look forward to working with you in our partnership moving forward.
Thanks for having us, Jessica.
Thank you. I hope all of you have a wonderful
All right, rest of the day.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.